we're going to do another Spring Awakening video. Please don't count us. This is like, what, our 4th one? So this is going to be a half what Spring Awakening means to us, plus we went and saw Spring Awakening at the Hayworth, Spring Awakening in concert, so we have our opinions on that to go over.
That made it sound bad. But we'll start with what Spring Awakening means to us. For me, I discovered Spring Awakening when it was still on Broadway. When I was a teenager, I was at a point in my life where I was pretty uncomfortable with myself, like through my adolescence. And through being a fan of Spring Awakening, I met people who felt similarly to myself, whether being they were gay or trans, or they just felt different from a lot of the other, teenagers they were around. And I learned not to be ashamed of myself and my body or how I felt about it. I found lifelong friends through Spring Awakening. That's actually how we became friends. That's how I met my girlfriend that I've been with for 3 years now. She's smiling. So it's like, aside from just the message of the show, I met people who felt the same way and resonated with the show like I resonated with the show. And I just found people who I felt like finally understood me. Yeah. In addition to that, it's just the show itself would blatantly state so many things I was feeling and couldn't put words to. And finding people who also liked the show finally made me feel like I wasn't completely by myself. That's one of the reasons I clung to it so strongly when I first discovered the music.
I first heard about Spring Awakening when I was in high school. It was a junior. Because I remember you and like Riley would always talk about it. And I like would try to join in, but I didn't know anything. I like really wanted to be her friend. You have no idea. I really wanted to be her friend. And I remember like I listened to the album and I was like, oh my god, like Bitch of Living is so cool. And then she looks at me like with a straight face and she goes, it's about masturbation. And I was like, oh.
You know what? No, this is something to talk about. I was a fan of the show when it was on Broadway, and then the show closed, and I kind of made my peace with the show, and I parted with the show. And then the show toured and came to LA, and then that's when Audrey and all of her friends kind of discovered the show and got into the show. I felt protective in the sense that I felt like a lot of the people didn't know what it was about, and they were like, I love this show so much, and they weren't getting the message, and the message had been so important to me and my development as an adolescent that it hurt. But I think the more I started to watch our friends and stuff, like start to like the show and learn about the show, they went from that like ignorant teenager that was like, oh, I love this music, to like, wow, this show has a lot of meaning in it, and I need to change the way I think about relationships and education and all of that. And so they went through the transformation they should have gone through with the show, and I think that's the important part.
For me, it was mostly what Spring Awakening like what effect it had on me was like, I grew up super sheltered. Like, my mother I, like, never had a sex conversation. And when I did, it was, like, literally she put a ketchup bottle and a mustard bottle together and, like, penetrated them. And that was it. Like, that was...
What kind of
parenting is that? That was my sex talk, was she put, like, a ketchup bottle and mustard bottle. I was like, that's sex. Don't have it. Terrible. And I was like, okay. And I just, like... I was, like, afraid to ask people. I was afraid to learn about that kind of stuff, and I just never asked anyone. It was, like, I felt, like, alone in it. Like, I didn't know who to talk to about it. I didn't feel comfortable with anyone. And, like, all throughout high school, like, literally, it was until my senior year of high school that I became comfortable with those things. And so when I saw it, I was, like, super uncomfortable about just, like, sexuality in general. Like, I'm not gay. Like, I'm straight. And it's, like, I was still super uncomfortable. Like, really uncomfortable. And it helped me just kind of, like, realize it's okay to ask questions and to learn and to discover.
I agree. You were really super awkward in high school. Yeah. She was really awkward.
It was really uncomfortable.
No, I mean, this is kind of pretty embarrassing to put online, but
Yeah.
well, I'll say it anyway, and we can edit it out if we decide not to put it in. When me and Audrey graduated from high school, and we like lost touch for a little while, and when we first reconnected, we found out we were going to college together. We first reconnected. we went to go get coffee, and somehow the conversation of masturbation came up. And we started talking, and we looked at each other, and we were like, oh my god, I can't talk about this with anybody else. And like that night, like we had spent like 12 hours together that day, you know. And it's like,
and the night ended in going to
and
a
it's
sex
not.
show together. That's how we consummated the friendship. Like,
you know, and like this is the thing is a lot of times, I get this not just with you, but like with a lot of my friends, people will assume we're sexually involved. And it's not that. It's just that we're comfortable talking about sex with each other. If someone goes on a date with someone new and we find out they have sex, it's like, oh, tell me how it was. It wasn't like, hee, you had sex. You know, so we don't shame it in our friendships with each other. And I think a lot of that has to do with Spring Awakening bringing us together and making us feel comfortable with those topics.
I definitely agree.
It was a completely life-altering show for both of us.
Oh, yeah.
And so that being said, we've seen almost every production of Spring Awakening that comes our way. If you watched our last video of the Spring Awakening trilogy we talked about 3 we saw that kind of progressively got worse as we talked about them. A good friend of ours recently put a production of Spring Awakening on, and we went to go see it, and we have some thoughts we want to share about that.